I want to talk with you today about when Christ died. And a lot of us think he died on the cross. Well, he did die on the cross, physically. But he first had to die in the Garden of Gethsemane. That's where Christ died. And then him dying on the cross was a formality that completed that. And this is the same demonstration in Christ's own life of faith and works. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he demonstrated his persuasion in God the Father by giving over his will to be completely synchronized with the Father's will. That was faith. That was persuasion. And look how hard it was for him. It was so hard, it was a toiling work by itself, as the word for deed, work, action means. It literally means a toiling work. He prayed to the point of sweating drops of blood. Have you ever prayed that hard? Have you? Surely you've prayed to the point of shedding tears, or your eyes hurting from clenching them so hard. That happens to me. But shedding drops of blood? It's a pretty heavy load. Yet Christ did that, and he died in the Garden of Gethsemane. He had to. That's where he had to make the decision ultimately to, all right, this is it. I'm going. This is the road. It begins here tonight. And he made that decision. He died to himself. The Father's will was completely his at that point. Now, he said earlier that the Father and I are one. That was referring to will also. But the Garden of Gethsemane cemented it. There was no turning back at that point because they were arresting him. There was no turning back. He was giving up his freedom physically, which was reflecting what he had done already in the Garden of Gethsemane in prayer. So when he gave up his freedom completely and thoroughly in the Garden of Gethsemane, knowing that it was going to set off a chain of events where he would be physically arrested and not have any will or freedom from then, even to his death. And then the death on the cross was the ultimate work, the ultimate action that completed his faith. And I'm only saying that because Jacob says that, aka James. He says faith is made complete by works or actions or deeds. Same word in Greek, one word. Faith is made complete by actions. Faith without the actions is dead and incomplete. And Jesus demonstrated that from the Garden of Gethsemane to the cross. And when we talk about following Jesus, Jesus said, pick up your cross and follow me. And many Christians are taught just through sermons, just through hearing people who don't follow Jesus giving sermons on it, saying that the cross represents our troubles in life. They just come up with that out of thin air. That's not what it means. It doesn't mean that. Because it says that God sends a rain to pour on the righteous and the unrighteous, and the sun to shine on the righteous and the unrighteous. And so the cares and worries of life are common between all men and all women. They're common. There's nothing unusual. What you suffer in the daily life is just common. And like Paul says also, you're not suffering any temptation that's not common to all men. So Jesus, when he says, take up your cross and follow me, the cross, what is the cross? Look at this. You got Gethsemane, you got the cross. Gethsemane is where Christ established his act of faith, his act of persuasion, ultimate faith and persuasion in the Garden of Gethsemane. This cemented him going to the cross to complete his action of what that faith began. But it had to be finished, because if Christ hadn't gone to the cross, then what he did in Gethsemane would mean nothing. And so faith means nothing until you have completed the work. Faith means nothing until that point. I mean, when he was arrested and being beaten, faith meant something, yeah. But if he had just been beaten and then released, and then what? What was that faith for then? He had to go and complete that action for that faith to be complete and meaningful. The cross is the final death. It's not the daily suffering. The cross is an instrument of execution. It's an instrument of execution. It's your electric chair. You heard that, I'm sure, somewhere. When he says, take up your cross and follow me, he's saying, take up this instrument of your death and follow me. Follow me. Die to yourself as I died in Gethsemane that led to the cross. From here on out, this has got to be your Garden of Gethsemane. There's no turning back. No turning back. Because when Jesus made that decision in the Garden of Gethsemane, there was no turning back. Judas and the gang showed up, he kissed him, they arrested him, that was it. That has to be the same for you. When Jesus says, take up your cross, he's referring to the Garden of Gethsemane. Let this, right now, this day, be your Garden of Gethsemane. The death of yourself that you cannot turn back from. Paul said, and I've quoted this many times. You must memorize this verse. I have been crucified with Christ. There's the cross. I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. Like the Father lives in Jesus from the Garden of Gethsemane on, without backing out. Christ has to live in you in such a way that there's no backing out. You have to find your Garden of Gethsemane, and it has to be here and now and irreversible. I have been crucified with Christ. I have been crucified, killed with Christ. And I no longer live. But Christ lives in me. The life I live in the body, I live by faith, persuasion in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. Galatians 2:20. This has to be your Garden of Gethsemane. No turning back. Christ in you, and you dead. May the Lord bless you as you seek him with all your heart.